Ignored, unappreciated, and used. He knocked. She smirked, then shut the door. What he did after that made the whole house go dark. Literally. They say silence is golden, but sometimes it's just cold. Like standing alone on a porch dusted with ice, arms full of carefully wrapped offerings no one asked for, while laughter leaks through the cracks of a house that used to feel like home. My name is Charles. I'm 33, and for the past 15 Christmas Eves, I've driven 4 hours through sleet and frostbite to make it home before the ham hit the table. No matter the chaos, missed flights, breakups, jobs unraveling at the seams, I showed up, without fail, because I wanted to believe that beneath the bickering and wine-fueled jabs, there was something intact, something warm, something worth preserving. But this year cut through that lie like broken glass under bare feet. It started the same way it always did. Half asleep, hunched over gift wrap at 2 a.m., hands cramping from folding, taping, tying ribbons no one would notice. I'd spent weeks tracking down the perfect presents. Glow-in-the-dark toys for the kids. Personalized cards for every cousin. A rare poetry collection Kenneth once mentioned in passing back in July. Even Ronald, her husband, got a gift, out of tradition, not affection. They never noticed the thought, only the weight of the wrapping. But I never kept score. Not really. Not out loud. I gave because I wanted to be seen. Because some hopeful part of me thought love was a door you had to keep knocking on until someone finally opened. The drive was brutal. Black ice snaking across lanes like veins under skin. I gripped the wheel with both hands, focus narrowed to the rhythmic swipe of the wipers. Still, I made good time. Pulled up to Kenneth's house at 3:42 p.m., right on schedule. Lights aglow. Cars jammed in the driveway. The sound of clinking glasses and muffled joy spilled through the windows. For a fleeting second, I smiled. Maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. I stepped out, smoothed my coat, squared my shoulders, and knocked. Kenneth answered. I will never forget her face. Not surprise, not joy, just a smug, brittle smile that never reached her eyes. Oh, you actually came? She said, head tilted like I was a dog that had wandered too far from its yard. My voice caught in my throat. Of course I came. I texted you last week. You did, she said, already halfway through closing the door. But we figured you'd get the hint. This year's just for family. Then she leaned in, close enough for her perfume to hit, and whispered like it was a secret wrapped in a sneer. Try harder to take the hint, Charles. And then the door was shut. No apology. No explanation. No Christmas. Just me. The gifts in my arms growing heavier by the second. Standing in a winter stillness so sharp it felt like the earth was holding its breath. I didn't knock again. I didn't call out. I didn't cry. I stood there, nodded, like someone who just heard the truth screamed after years of whispers. Then I turned, walked back to my car, opened the trunk, set the gifts down one by one with reverence, like laying stones on a grave. Then I got behind the wheel and started the engine. I hadn't even reached the highway before my phone buzzed. A text from Ronald. Why would that loser even show up? At first, my brain refused to process it. I stared at the screen as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. But they didn't. It was meant for someone else. Meant to entertain. Meant to humiliate. And just like that, the silence inside me shattered. Not in a scream, but in a smile. A small, tired one. Because Ronald, who once sobbed into a beer I paid for after losing his job, seemed to have forgotten who covered their utility bills for 8 months. And Kenneth, who'd begged me to co-sign their refinance, must have thought I'd just keep playing the silent benefactor, year after year, with no thanks, no boundary, no dignity. They were wrong. I veered into a gas station parking lot, killed the engine, pulled my laptop from the back seat like a scalpel. One by one, I logged in gas, power, Wi-Fi, that bloated Spotify family plan. I didn't hesitate. Removed my payment methods. Canceled autopay. Revoked access. Even the Amazon Prime account I'd foolishly shared gone. There was no fury. No vengeance. Just clarity. They had drawn a line. I simply decided to believe them. After revoking the digital lifelines I'd quietly sustained for nearly 2 years, I opened the loan dashboard and initiated the first step to remove myself as co-signer. It wasn't a swift process. Layers of paperwork, emails, follow-ups, but I'd begun, and that current, once still and obliging, had shifted. It was moving now. Tidal. Irrevocable. By the time I turned into my apartment complex, headlights cutting through a pale dawn mist, my phone screen was littered with 14 missed calls. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I peeled off the layers of cold and obligation, took a long shower, and reheated the sesame noodles I'd meant to throw out 2 nights ago. Then, for the first time in years, I watched a movie on Christmas Eve without pretending to find someone's joke charming, without forcing a laugh over bitterness. I didn't feel angry. I felt weightless. Not joyous, but hollow in a strangely peaceful way. As if something buried deep, my spine, maybe, had finally remembered how to hold me upright. The calls kept coming. 31, then 38, then 44. Like static trying to claw its way back in. At 3:17 a.m. a message buzzed through the quiet. From Kenneth, "We need to talk." No context. No apology. Just a command entitled and familiar. The kind people send when they still believe you owe them a piece of yourself. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. But I didn't open it. Not yet. Because for once I wasn't racing to pick up the shattered pieces of someone else's mess. I wasn't absorbing the fallout. I was just sitting. Still. A man on the edge of his own bed, holding a phone like a weight, thinking back on every moment I'd bitten my tongue for the sake of peace. Every time I'd smile through humiliation. Every holiday where I'd convinced myself that love came dressed in sarcasm and silence. They called me sensitive. Dramatic. A little too much. And I'd believed them. I'd learned to shrink before they even asked me to. But here's the thing, they were right about one thing. I wasn't needed. And now they would finally feel what that absence meant. They had no idea how much I'd handled for them. How many invisible burdens I'd carried without complaint. They'd seen generosity as default, not sacrifice. They'd mistaken silence for permission. I tapped the screen and opened the message. "We need to talk." Just that. No warmth. No humility. No, "I'm sorry." Just an assumption that I'd come running at the snap of her fingers. I didn't reply. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because anything I wrote would be dipped in venom. And I wasn't in the business of performing pain anymore. I needed space. Not silence, but distance, the kind that comes with perspective. And still, the messages came. One from Mom. Then Dad. Even Eric, my cousin who never texts unless there's a group photo to share or someone's having a baby. Each one tiptoed around accountability like it was something fragile. "Hey sweetie, Kenneth said you left early. Everything okay? Call me when you get a sec." Not sure what happened, but Ronald's phone must have been hacked. "Charles? Just call her. It's Christmas." Christmas. The golden excuse. The sacred season that forgives all sins so long as the optics stay intact. But it was never about how I felt. It never had been. It was about smoothing things over. Keeping the illusion intact. That had been my role since I was 16. The emotional janitor. The one who understood why everyone else was allowed to be cruel. Why I had to absorb it. At 6:41 a.m. a voicemail lit up my screen. From Ronald. His voice cracked like a bad actor faking remorse. "Charles, man, look, that text wasn't meant for you, okay? It was just a dumb joke between me and Kenneth. You know we love you. Come on. And I don't know what's going on, but the gas company says autopay didn't go through and Kenneth's mom is here and the kids are cold. Man, just, can you call me back?" I listened to it again. Slowly. "You know we love you." That's the kind of thing people say when they love what you do for them, not who you are. Still, there was no gloating in me. No swell of triumph. Just quiet. It felt like standing at a fork in the road, both paths veiled in fog. One led back to the same role I'd always played, meek, reliable, silent. The other? Unknown. Untested. But honest. I chose the latter. I brewed coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. Opened my laptop and pulled up a blank spreadsheet. Not out of pettiness, but precision. I needed to see it in black and white. To know the cost of being their fallback. I started typing. $4,200 co-signed mortgage refinance. $720 utilities over 8 months. $300 school supplies. $180 emergency vet visit. $1,600 summer camp deposit. $1,250 groceries and random help. $480 Uber Eats gift cards. $9,500 assorted credit cards and bill payments. $450 subscriptions, family plans, streaming. $18,680 total in 24 months. No thank you cards. No acknowledgement. Just silence and expectation. But not anymore. They'd made the rules. I'd simply decided to play by them. It's strange how easy it is to hemorrhage for people who've convinced you that your wounds are just signs of love. They never asked outright. They didn't need to. It came in coded phrases, "You're the only one who gets it," or "Once Ronald's bonus clears, we'll square up," or the heavy sigh followed by "Just this once, we swear." It was always framed as temporary, always wrapped in need. But over time, dependency stopped looking like crisis and started looking like routine. The realization didn't crash down on me. It bled in quietly, like a leak behind drywall. By the time I noticed the rot, the structure had already warped. That's when the real clarity set in. Not rage, something far colder. The kind of calm that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that redefines love as a ledger, not a promise. At 8:12 a.m., I picked up my phone and typed 3 words to Kenneth. Lose my number. No preamble. No scolding. No cracked heart emoji. It was surgical. Final. Her response came within seconds. Wait, what? Call me. Don't be dramatic. It was a misunderstanding. You know how Ronald jokes. And then, you can't be serious. It's Christmas. Of course. It's Christmas. As if the season absolved every trespass. As if years of humiliation could be gift-wrapped in red and gold and forgiven under a tree. But I didn't respond. I was past dialogue. I was in the realm of decisions. Instead, I called the loan company and began the real work. Severance. The agent on the line, her voice soft, efficient, walked me through the protocol. Proof of income, payment history, paperwork, patience. But it was possible. And more importantly, it had begun. By mid-morning, I'd scrubbed every digital fingerprint I'd left behind. Subscriptions, logins, backup contacts, payment links. I cut cords so subtly they wouldn't even notice until something failed to load. Then I opened my inbox and attached the spreadsheet. No subject line, no explanation, just columns and silence. Every dollar, every favor, every just this once quantified. I labeled it, "For your records." And then I did something I should have done years ago. I erased them. Blocked, deleted, muted. Even my parents, whose neutrality had always felt suspiciously like alliance. This wasn't about punishment. It was about self-rescue. But I wasn't finished. Because they still didn't remember the detail I'd buried in legal paperwork 3 years earlier. The one that would make everything else irrelevant. The house they lived in. The one Ronald bragged about refinancing. The one Kenneth decorated like a Pottery Barn ad. It wasn't theirs. Not legally. Not technically. It was mine. After Dad's pension vaporized and the bank started circling, I stepped in, quietly, cleanly, transferred the deed into a trust. For tax reasons, yes, but also because I knew what they were like when things got fragile. Ronald never read past the first page of anything. Kenneth skimmed and signed. They saw the payment go down, assumed the problem had solved itself, and thanked me with a bottle of supermarket wine and a half-hearted joke. They didn't care who owned the roof. But they were about to learn. Not yet, though. Timing mattered. If I moved too fast, it would become a story about me. Angry Charles, the overreactor, the grudge holder. But if I waited, if I let the silence stretch, let the unpaid bills echo, let the electricity flicker and the family group chat shift from confusion to concern, then it wouldn't be revenge. It would be consequence. So I waited. December 27th. The first crack surfaced. I was in the middle of a second cup of coffee, a nature documentary murmuring in the background, when my phone lit up with a notification. Dorothy, an old friend from high school, had tagged me in a private message. A screen recording. Kenneth live on Facebook. I didn't want to watch. I already knew the tone. But I tapped it anyway. There she was, framed by bad lighting and fake melancholy, sitting on their couch like a widow at a funeral she planned herself. "It's just been a hard holiday," she said, voice trembling with practiced fragility. "The kids don't get why the Wi-Fi's out. Ronald's been on hold with the electric company all morning. And we just thought family would be there. You know?" Her eyes glistened but didn't spill. In the comments, pity, sympathy, heart emojis, offers to help. "You don't deserve this. Some people are so selfish. What kind of brother walks away at Christmas?" I watched for another few seconds. Then I closed the app. Not angry, not even surprised. Let them perform. I had nothing left to prove. And winter doesn't explain itself. She never said my name. Not once. She never addressed what was done, what had been said, or the slow theft of my generosity disguised as tradition. No acknowledgement, just a carefully curated public heartbreak. She played to the crowd like she always had. Kenneth the martyr, the misunderstood mother, crushed beneath the weight of family betrayal. It was convincing, I'll give her that. The comments came in waves. You don't deserve this. Sending love. Do you have a wish list? Even strangers were offering grocery money. One woman pledged to send sweaters for the girls. I didn't respond. Didn't reach for the truth. I simply saved the video. December 29th. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Didn't answer. Voicemail came 5 minutes later, Ronald, speaking like a man whose charm had expired mid-sentence. Charles, listen. I don't know what point you're trying to make here, but this has gone too far. The mortgage company's saying I'm not authorized to speak on the property. I thought this was all transferred 3 years ago. You said it was handled. A pause. A recalibration of tone. You can't just ignore us. The girls are in the dark, it's 22 degrees outside, and Kenneth's mom is stuck here. Come on. Be an adult. Call me. There it was. Not remorse. Not a question. Just the assumption that I'd circle back. That I'd fix it. That I'd cave. And it clicked finally and cleanly. They didn't just rely on me. They believed they owned me. The money. The help. The silence. They thought it all came included. That night, I logged into the property trust account. Scrolled to a clause I had written and forgotten, a 30-day tenant removal provision for violation of verbal agreement, breach of trust, or exploitation. A clause no one had read. But I had documented everything. The payments. The texts. The messages where Kenneth asked me to just keep this between us so people wouldn't think Ronald was failing as a husband. Screenshots. Dates. Receipts. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. Resolved. Like someone finally cutting the rope after years of dragging a weight uphill. Still, I hadn't acted. Because I wasn't chasing revenge. I wasn't trying to scorch the ground they walked on. I just wanted silence. Separation. Something permanent and clean. The moment came on January 2nd. I was eating a microwaved lunch, rain ticking at the window, when there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was my mother. She looked worn thin, a hair pulled back in haste, eyes rimmed red like she just stepped out of a long, unsatisfying cry. She held a paper shopping bag like it was a peace treaty she didn't fully believe in. Can I come in? She asked, already halfway through the threshold. I moved aside without speaking. She sat on the edge of the couch, knees close, back straight. I stayed standing. I didn't know, she began. I didn't know you were covering so much. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I didn't reply. She swallowed. They told me you were overreacting. That you were emotional. That you'd taken something the wrong way. I raised an eyebrow. And you believed them? Her eyes dropped to the floor. I did. For a minute. Silence stretched between us, tight and long. Then, softly, your father and I, we've talked. We're sorry. We should have seen it. And we understand if you need time. I wanted to let that be enough. I really did. Then she reached into the bag and pulled out a small stack of envelopes, handwritten notes from the girls, a crayon drawing of what I assumed was me with a dog I don't own, and a glitter-covered card in Kenneth's handwriting, childish and contrived. We miss you. Please come home. She held it out like it would undo something. They're hurting, she said gently. I sighed. I'm sure they are. But they weren't hurting when they shut the door in my face. They weren't hurting when Ronald called me a loser. They were laughing. She looked away. You raised her, I said. But I'm done parenting your daughter. She didn't argue. Just nodded. Slowly. As if something in her had given way. At the door, she paused. You know they'll lose the house. I know, I said. A beat. Maybe that's what it takes. And then she left. That night, I sat at my desk and pulled up the eviction paperwork. No bitterness. No fury. Just quiet fingers typing into legal forms. I gave them the full 30 days. No fees. No penalties. No demands for repayment. It wasn't punishment. It was an ending. I wasn't pushing them into the cold. I was stepping out of it. And maybe, just maybe, I was learning what it meant to save myself. The morning after the notice was delivered, everything shifted, not suddenly, but like a fault line giving way after years of quiet pressure. At 9:06 a.m., there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Ronald was standing there. Red-eyed. Shoulders slumped. His hands hung awkwardly at his sides like he didn't know what to do without a beer or a phone to fidget with. And he wasn't alone. Kenneth stood a few feet behind him, arms crossed, not defensively, but like someone holding herself together by sheer muscle. No mascara. No smile. No glittery apologies. Just skin and silence and a jaw so tight it looked painful. They didn't speak right away. And I didn't invite them in. Ronald was the first to breathe. "We're not here to fight," he said, voice low. I said nothing. But I didn't close the door either. We need to talk," he added. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe I just wanted to watch them sit with the consequences. Either way, I stepped aside. They entered cautiously like trespassers in a sacred space. Their eyes scanned the room like they expected to find pictures of them on the walls, as if I might have built my life around their chaos. I didn't offer them coffee. Or a chair. But they sat anyway, Ronald on the edge of the couch, Kenneth standing behind him, unmoving. "The notice came yesterday," he said. "We read it twice." Silence. And we didn't see it coming. "Not really." I nodded once. He looked down at his hands. "I thought you'd always be there, you know? You always were." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't think. You knew. And you banked on it." Kenneth finally spoke. Her voice was strained, like she'd swallowed her pride and it was now trying to crawl back up. "We never meant to push you out." I tilted my head. "You mean when you locked the door in my face? That push?" She winced. "I thought. I don't know. That you'd roll with it. You always do. You're the one who holds things together." "No," I said quietly. "I'm just the one who never fights back." Ronald shifted, ran a hand over his face. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "I screwed up. The text. It was cruel. I can't take that back. But I need to say it anyway, I'm sorry." His voice didn't wobble. It was flat. Exhausted. But it didn't feel rehearsed. He looked up and met my eyes, no smirk, no sales pitch. Just a man finally looking at the wreckage he'd helped build. Kenneth reached into her bag and pulled out something folded and creased, the envelope I'd used to send the spreadsheet. "We looked at everything," she said. "All the payments. The bills. The notes. I didn't remember half of it. I think. I chose not to." I didn't reply. There was nothing to add. "We've been honest with the girls," she said, her voice thinner now. "Told them we might have to move. Maybe into my parents' place. Brandon's picking up more hours. I applied for a second job. We're not here to beg." Ronald nodded, eyes still fixed on the floor. "You were right to do what you did," he said. "We took advantage. We coasted on your kindness and we got used to the idea that you'd never stop." I stayed quiet. Not because I wanted them to squirm, but because there was finally nothing left to say. They stood. Kenneth turned to the door first, then paused. She looked back, not with tears, not with desperation. Just a quiet weariness. "I hope you find peace, Charles. You deserve it." And then they left. No hugs. No dramatic breakdown. Just the soft click of the door closing behind them. I stood alone in the stillness of my apartment, not triumphant, not broken. Just still. I thought closure would come with shouting. Maybe forgiveness. Or regret. But it came like this, in the silence after the storm. In the strange light of people who finally saw you as more than a utility. Maybe they'd change. Maybe they wouldn't. But for the first time in years, I understood something deeply and without hesitation. It wasn't mine to fix anymore. Their future wasn't my burden. Their house wasn't my responsibility. Their pain wasn't my inheritance. And peace? It wasn't something they could hand me. I had to build it myself. The end didn't make a sound. No slammed doors. No desperate last-minute voicemails. No tearful confessions scribbled on the back of an envelope. Just the quiet efficiency of a system finally completing its cycle. On the last day of January, I received a short, sterile email from the property manager. "The house is vacant. Keys returned. All accounts finalized. You're free to close the file." I stared at the screen, not blinking. That was it. No ceremony. No reckoning. Just a small sentence that carried the weight of 3 years, maybe 30. I didn't feel joy. Or grief. Or anything you could name with certainty. Only stillness. The kind that comes after a long, low hum disappears and you realize how long you've been holding your breath. I closed the laptop, poured a glass of water, and sat there for a long time doing nothing at all. Not celebrating. Not regretting. Just being. That weekend I drove until I found the ocean. No destination. No photos taken. No one to text that I'd made it safely. I walked until the wind scraped the silence out of me. Let the sea mist touch my face without asking for meaning. I didn't listen to music. I didn't scroll. I didn't search for signs. I brought a blank notebook, one I hadn't touched in half a decade. I opened it. Wrote a single line across the first page. "Stop mistaking suffering for love." That was all. No paragraphs. No reflection. Just the truth sitting there like a stone. 3 months passed. Then, one afternoon in spring, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. No handwriting I recognized. Inside, a photo. My niece's 2 small faces smiling despite the grainy print holding a cardboard sign. Thank you, Uncle Charles. We miss you. Tucked beneath was a note. Short, uneven. Kenneth's handwriting, this time smaller. Humble. We're figuring things out. Not perfect, but not pretending either. Thank you for doing what we never could. Love, even if from far away. I held the photo for a moment, then slid it back into the envelope. I didn't cry. That part of me felt quiet now, tender, but no longer open for business. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care. Because I didn't need to. Some stories don't need sequels. Some relationships only heal when left alone. I placed the envelope in the back of a drawer I never opened without purpose. Then I went back to my life. A new life. One with intact edges. One without emotional drafts sneaking through the cracks. A life where I no longer had to shrink myself to fit someone else's version of family. That December, I didn't check the weather forecast for another town. I didn't pack the car. I didn't buy gifts I couldn't afford for people who forgot my birthday. I stayed home, wrapped myself in quiet. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't miss what I left behind.